Imagine you're living in Rome in 476 CE. The emperor has just been deposed, but here's the strange part. You probably wouldn't have noticed. The markets are still open, Latin is still spoken, the churches still hold services, life goes on. So when exactly did Rome fall? The answer depends entirely on which historian you ask. The last Western Roman emperor was a teenager named Romulus Augustulus. His name combined Rome's legendary founder Romulus with Augustus, the empire's first emperor, but that suffix, "ulus," means little, little Augustus, little Romulus. Rome's end came not with a conquering hero, but with a boy whose very name was a diminutive joke. The barbarian general Odovacier deposed him, then did something unexpected. He rode to Constantinople, pledging loyalty to the Eastern Emperor. The Western Roman Empire didn't collapse in a single moment. It disintegrated over decades from roughly 410 to 480 CE. Here's what most people get wrong. The barbarian groups didn't want to destroy Rome. They wanted to be Rome. They wanted to share in its wealth, its prestige, its civilization. When Odovacier took power in 476, he didn't declare a new empire. He sent the imperial regalia to Constantinople. The Western Empire simply stopped having its own emperor. No dramatic conquest, no burning cities, just a quiet administrative change that contemporaries barely registered as significant. Before we examine the evidence, we need one key distinction. An empire is a multinational state ruled from one center, vast territory under unified administration. A kingdom is more limited, a single nation or tribe with localized rule. Rome was an empire. What replaced it were kingdoms: Visigothic, Ostrogothic, Frankish, Vandal. Same territories, fundamentally different political structures. The German origin word kingdom itself signals the shift from Mediterranean universalism to tribal particularity. Historians have debated Rome's fall for centuries. The arguments cluster around three central questions. First, why did the West fall apart? Was it external pressure, invasions, migrations, military defeats, or internal decay, economic collapse, political corruption, loss of civic virtue? Did Rome fall or was it pushed? Second, who were the barbarians? How Romanized had they become after generations of contact? Were they foreign destroyers or assimilated participants? Third, how severe was the transformation? Did Roman civilization gradually evolve into something new, or did it catastrophically collapse, leaving a void we call the Dark Ages? Historians who emphasize discontinuity are called catastrophists. The evidence is stark. Consider the playwright Aeschylus, one of antiquity's greatest dramatists. He wrote approximately 60 plays. 3 survive. 95% of his work gone. This isn't just about theater. It represents systematic civilizational loss. Literacy collapsed. Reading and writing became confined to a small portion of Christian clergy. Grand civic projects ended. No more aqueducts, coliseums, theaters, or public baths. So our cities depopulated as society became rural and isolated. Trade networks that once connected Britain to Syria shrank to local subsistence. The material foundations of classical civilization crumbled. Historians who emphasize continuity, Continuists, present different evidence. Trade networks survive in modified form. More importantly, institutions adapted. When Roman governors disappeared, bishops filled the vacuum. They maintained food supplies, organized city defense, educated the populace. Same functions, different titles. Barbarian kings actively tried to perpetuate Roman order. They collected taxes using Roman systems. They maintained public works where possible. They employed Roman administrators. The church preserved Latin as a living language. Monasteries maintained written records. Canon law incorporated Roman legal principles. The institutional skeleton of Roman civilization persisted even as its political flesh decayed. Historian Roger Collins crystallized the debate with one provocative sentence: "The fall of the Roman Empire in the West was not the disappearance of a civilization, it was merely the breakdown of a governmental apparatus that could no longer be sustained." Notice that word, merely. Everything hinges on it. Is government merely government, one layer among many, with culture surviving independently, or is government the foundation? And when it collapses, everything else eventually follows? Your answer determines which camp you join. The catastrophist continuist debate isn't about who has the right facts. Both camps examine the same evidence. The disagreement is about what we choose to measure and what we choose to call civilization. If you measure literacy rates, architectural achievement, trade volume, and urban population, Rome collapsed. The evidence is overwhelming. Between 450 and 550 CE, every material indicator of classical civilization declined dramatically. If you measure religious institutions, cultural identity, linguistic continuity, and the legal traditions, Rome transformed. The Church preserved and transmitted Roman heritage. Latin remained the language of learning for 1,000 years. Something radical did happen in the 5th century, but it didn't happen all at once, and people living through it didn't fully recognize the cataclysm. Surface continuities masked deeper changes. The term Dark Ages for the 6th through 11th centuries carries a value judgment, implying good periods and bad periods. Historians now avoid it, but the impulse behind the term captures something real: a dramatic reduction in complexity, connectivity, and material achievement. The moderate position acknowledges both realities. 476 CE marks a point in the process, not a single moment of collapse. Transformation and catastrophe coexisted. The question, can culture survive without a functioning state, isn't just historical. It echoes in modern debates about failed states, institutional collapse, and civilizational resilience. When governments fail today, we ask the same questions 5th century observers asked. Will trade networks survive? Will education continue? Will law and order persist through informal institutions? Will cultural identity outlast political structures? The Roman example offers no simple answer. Some things survived, many things didn't. The Church preserved Latin but couldn't preserve literacy rates. Barbarian kings maintained roads but couldn't maintain the economy that built them. How we define civilization determines whether we see its end. The catastrophists define civilization materially: literacy, architecture, trade, urban life. By their measure, Rome fell hard. The Continuists define civilization institutionally and culturally: religion, language, law, identity. By their measure, Rome transformed. Both definitions capture something true, both miss something important. Perhaps the deepest lesson is this: civilizational collapse isn't a single event you can point to on a calendar. It's a process that unfolds across generations, visible only in retrospect. The people living through it experience continuity, markets still open, languages still spoken, services still held. The fall of Rome reminds us that the end of a civilization might look from the inside like ordinary life continuing, until one day it doesn't.